I learned at an early age what it is to be angry. Angry. Helpless.
Angry young men don't have the best reputation these days.
What we know is that the preponderance of hate crimes are perpetrated by men.
When we think of the phrase, we think of male violence, masculinity in crisis.
You talking to me?
A generation of men unable or unwilling to be emotionally mature.
Fellow angry white American guys, give it up. We've been running the show for 10,000 years.
Yet if we look back, the angry young man trope on screen originated as something very different. This character came onto the scene in the so-called kitchen sink dramas of the 50s and 60s British New Wave as a working-class anti-hero who challenged the established orders of society.
It is possible to take people of all classes seriously, their opinions seriously, their intelligence seriously, their wit seriously.
Outside of Britain, the character also took off as an agent of disruptive political protest. Over the years, angry young men of color on screen also increasingly vented their even more justified rage against systemic oppression.
Why you need to see my ID?
Son, I said ID.
I'm not your son.
Yet these characters' anger frequently hasn't been viewed with the same legitimacy or acceptance.
Did you know it was an incendiary film when you were making it? Did you know that it had a kind of explosive kind of...
I really would not use the word incendiary.
Recently, the angry white man on screen has evolved into something closer to a villain. As seen in 2019's Joker,
what do you get?
I don't think so.
When you cross a mentally ill loner with a society that abandons him and treats him like trash!
and Star Wars' Kylo Ren. But the immense popularity of both these characters and their films proved that this trope still attracts a lot of attention and identification, as well as controversy in our culture.
What the film certainly does is takes the temperature of a particular moment where people, it seems to me at least, feel dissatisfied, oppressed, and split.
So, looking over the decades, who are the angry young men we listen to, and who are the ones we challenge? Is all anger equally valid or equally heard?
The world took everything away from me. Everything I ever loved.
Here's our take on the angry young men, and increasingly women, past and future.
You're watching The Take. Let us know your take.
This video is brought to you by Mubi, a curated streaming service showing exceptional films from around the globe. It's like your own personal film festival streaming anytime, anywhere. The angry young man as anti-hero first emerged on the stage and on the page, with many viewing Kingsley Amos's 1954 novel Lucky Jim.
Very England. Lutes and flutes and chase me round the maypole. Phony baloney. It never was merry. It was murder.
And John Osborne's 1956 play Look Back in Anger as the start of the movement.
The injustice of it is almost perfect. The wrong people going hungry. The wrong people being loved. The wrong people dying.
Both helped establish the angry young man genre as defined by gritty realism and a focus on dissatisfied working class characters.
Jim is a socialist, I suppose, after a fashion. But I think both he and I are, or would be by now, anti-conservative people rather than socialists.
Before these films came along, British cinema was preoccupied with the middle and upper classes, as evidenced in the highly successful comedies that came out of Ealing Studios.
There was Admiral Lord Horatio Gascoigne. There was General Lord Rufus Gascoigne. There was Lady Agatha Gascoigne.
So when young British directors of the free cinema movement, Carol Rice, Lindsay Anderson, and Tony Richardson, all adapted angry young man novels into their feature film debuts, the very act of portraying the reality of working class life was a kind of political protest, raging against the elitism of the dominant narratives of the day.
Nigel and Alison. They're what they sound like. Sycophantic, phlegmatic, and pusillanimous.
When working class characters had featured in British films before this point, they were frequently one-dimensional props serving or interacting with the upper classes.
Is this the boy, sir?
Yes, I'm afraid it is.
Afraid?
Poor little fellow, he's hurt himself.
I did that, sir. I stopped him. I cut my knuckles against his mouth.
But the more authentic working class portrayals of the angry young men movement painted a different picture. Far from being disheveled, down-and-out beggars, these characters do have disposable income. It's just that the money from their hard work doesn't translate into social mobility. Saturday night and Sunday morning's anti-hero Arthur Seaton, played by a young Albert Finney, wears nice clothes, goes to bars, has a fashionable haircut.
I'm me and nobody else. Whatever people say I am, that's what I'm not. Because they don't know a bloody thing about me.
But he's not motivated by the promise of working his way up the ladder, and openly criticizes the older generation for chasing that goal.
Fred's all right. He's one of them who knows how to spend his money, like me. Enjoys himself. That's more than them poor beggars know.
As a result, his anger is nihilistic, disaffected, directionless. He's violently unsatisfied with his lot and his options in life. And his anger ends up being ultimately tragic, as in the film's climax, he appears about to settle down and follow the same domestic path as his parents, whom he'd previously described as dead from the neck up.
This character, for example, had practically all the earthly bread he wanted, but he didn't have any spiritual bread whatsoever of any kind.
Even when the angry young men characters weren't themselves political, their lack of social engagement was itself political.
Look, if you don't want to watch the film, don't spoil it for those that do. Don't like this country, why the hell don't they get out?
As writer Leslie Paul, whose 1951 autobiography was titled Angry Young Man, put it, the angry young men of the 50s belonged to a generation seemingly devoid of political interests, and the moment of their rise coincided with the deepest trough of political and spiritual apathy Britain has passed through since the end of the war. To this early angry young man, maybe even more important than the class divide was the generational one. Travis, the anti-hero of Lindsay Anderson's 1968 movie, If, isn't coded as working class, but his anger stems from rage against the older generation's establishment.
The thing I hate about you, Roundtree, is the way you give Coca-Cola to your scum and your best teddy bear to Oxfam, and expect us to lick your frigid fingers.
Travis's rebellion against the violent, rigid, and abusive class system of his school environment is symbolic of the greater atmosphere of revolution in the world at the time, as evidenced in protests against the Vietnam War, the birth of the anti-nuclear movement, and the student riots in Paris in May 1968.
There's no such thing as a wrong war. Violence and revolution are the only pure acts.
Certain social realist films veered away from or supplemented the harsh realism of the early kitchen sink style with a more surreal and strange streak. These dreamlike touches, which can be found in more modern examples of the genre too, suggest that in a world that traps its citizens, the only true escape possible may be a mental one.
You know, I believe my mental condition's extremely illegal.
Outside of the social realist genre, Stanley Kubrick's 1971 dystopian classic, A Clockwork Orange, in which he cast Malcolm McDowell directly off the back of the young actor's performance in If, also centered on disturbing, violent, directionless male anger, coming up against an establishment that seeks to deprive its youth of all individuality and agency.
I was cured, all right.
Meanwhile, the trope took on a new life beyond the shores of the UK. In the 1970s, Amitabh Bachchan was dubbed India's angry young man for his roles in Bollywood films such as Zanjeer, Deewaar, and Kaalia.
हम भी वो हैं जो कभी किसी के पीछे नहीं खड़े होते। जहाँ खड़े हो जाते हैं, लाइन वहीं से शुरू होती है। नंबरदार, भर दे ताली।
Again, the character held a mirror to wider society, reflecting a tumultuous period for India, which was coming out of the 1971 war with Pakistan, and in the midst of a government policy of population control that led to more than 6 million, mostly poor men being coerced into sterilization.
Somewhere it reflects the temperament of the people, what they want their leading man to, or their hero to behave like, to conduct himself, even on screen.
Around the same time in America, blaxploitation cinema, with films like Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song and Black Caesar, showed young black male anger as a response to the systemic oppression these young people were facing on a daily basis.
He doesn't look very tough to me. Does he look tough to you? Huh?
The angry young man character had taken root in cultures around the world. In France in 1995, Mathieu Kassavitz's film La Haine, which focused on 3 youths in the suburbs of Paris, was seen as so important that then French Prime Minister Alain Juppé set up a private screening for his government to, in the words of The Independent at the time, see what it was up against. In Britain, modern films in the social realist tradition to this day use updates to the angry young man, and sometimes the angry young woman, to articulate political or social problems.
Rocks and little Falklands.
Why?
Because I want you to.
This loads of dickheads staying out there for nothing.
My dad want a dickhead!
As global as he became, though, the angry young man has varied a great deal in his different iterations, and there have been crucial differences in how he's received.
I just want to say to my critics, I hear your voices, and I'm aware of your concerns.
So maybe if you can chill the hell out for like a second, then maybe I can focus on some shit, you know?
While white male anger has been treated in so many films as a noble protest, there's a long history of black men being stereotyped as aggressive and violent. This racist caricaturing has its roots in white society using these false characterizations to justify slavery. As sociologist Abby L. Ferber writes, black men were defined as beasts who had to be controlled and tamed to be put into service. So when black male anger was shown on screen as a response to racism, despite this being a far more legitimate reason to get mad than any of the white angry young men ever had, this was criticized in a way that white anger never was.
So since we spend much money here, we do have some say.
You looking for trouble?
Are you a troublemaker? Is that what you are?
Take Spike Lee's 1989 film Do the Right Thing, which ends with a harrowing scene of police brutality followed by the central character Mookie throwing a trash can through the window of Sal's famous pizzeria.
Your money couldn't begin to pay for the window you broke.
Motherfucker window. Raider Raheem is dead.
Despite the fact that Mookie has just witnessed the murder of his friend, and Sal and his sons are racist to their majority black clientele throughout the film, the conversation around this ending is often framed as a debate of the question, was Mookie right to start a riot? Isn't it unfair that Sal loses his premises?
They just put more weight on the loss of white-owned property than a black life. And so that has not changed.
Meanwhile, initial reviews of the film even insinuated that the scene would start riots in the black community. Newsweek's Jack Kroll called it dynamite under every seat. New York Magazine's Joe Klein wrote, if black kids act on what they see, Lee may have destroyed his career. David Denby, also writing in New York Magazine, said Spike Lee would like to be counted in the black community as an angry man, a man ready, despite his success, to smash things.
You stood there like a and you watched them burn me down.
I watched it. I also watched the cops murder Raider Raheem.
Lee has called those reviews uncut, unfiltered racism, saying to think that black moviegoers don't have the intelligence to discern what is on screen and that they would duplicate what Mookie was doing was ludicrous. But this response shows that when anger is placed into the hands of young black men on screen, it's traditionally been seen as dangerous, even irresponsible.
20 years since the film came out, no black person ever asked me why Mookie threw the garbage can through the window. Only white people ask that question.
The 2015 NWA biopic, Straight Outta Compton, depicts just how much heat the group took after releasing the song F*** the Police.
How do you explain inciting a riot in Detroit? What do you have to say about that?
I have to say that we didn't incite that.
Straight Outta Compton also offers a kind of origin story for the song, juxtaposing its creation with the group members being harassed by LAPD outside of their studio.
Get on the ground, now!
Once again, the social anger of the song is illustrated as a direct and justified response to injustice, but their artistic response of self-expression is viewed by their society as criminal and used to punish them.
You got something to say, boy? Chew. Get inside. Let's get back to work. You heard what your master said. Get inside. Boy.
This is not just true of men either. Black women have long been plagued by the sapphire, or angry black woman stereotype.
Whenever someone weaponizes anger against black women, it is designed to silence them. It is designed to discredit them and to say that they are overreacting.
While the stereotype gets called out and resisted, this misogynoir still appears frequently in pop culture.
I didn't get no sleep because of y'all. Y'all not gonna get no sleep because of me.
And what of women in general? What happens when they get angry?
Don't be mad at me because I didn't invent the world. Yeah. But nobody likes an angry woman.
Arguably, the most iconic rebel women in cinema are Thelma and Louise. And while the film is remembered almost as an escapist fantasy of female friendship, the anger that binds these two women together is rooted in a tragic acceptance of rape culture.
Just about 100 goddamn people saw you dancing cheek to cheek with them all night. Who's gonna believe that we don't live in that kind of a world, Thelma?
Their anger doesn't free them, it traps them, and in the end, the only way they can liberate themselves is through death. In Erin Brockovich, Erin may eventually come out of the film as the winner, but the fact that she's a volatile, tempestuous character is constantly used by others as an attempt to discredit her.
This is serious.
And what, Ed? I'm not serious?
You're emotional. Look, you're erratic. You say any goddamn thing that comes into your head.
Andrea Arnold, continuing the British social realist tradition for contemporary audiences, features young working-class female characters whose dissatisfaction reflects an unfair society that's neglected them.
Talk about ugly, you skanky little faggot.
As society has evolved, the angry young man trope has evolved with it, and those dissatisfied white males who were once admirable political antiheroes have morphed into social villains.
I got some bad ideas in my head.
One of the biggest films of 2019 was a social realist-style character study about a working-class man whose anger at society manifests itself in violent ways.
All I have are negative thoughts.
And the explosive controversy surrounding the film testified to the fact that the angry young man continues to be as politically charged a figure as ever, and scary to many people, especially if he aligns with the wrong politics. The slew of think pieces debating whether the film was dangerous before it even came out read a little like those early reviews of Do the Right Thing.
The movie makes statements about lack of love, childhood trauma, lack of compassion in the world, and I think people can handle that message.
But in this case, it was the film's alt-right fan base critics feared.
The thing that this movie is really about is white male rage, white male rage.
The angry young man is inevitably read as a mirror of his time's broader social climate, and Joker wasn't the first time when the figure was linked to an unsympathetic or alarming politics. Joker consciously models itself on early Martin Scorsese films starring Robert De Niro, including Taxi Driver, whose racist, sexist, disturbed Travis Bickle embodied the dark side of the 70s American angry young white man, psychologically damaged by Vietnam, alienated by the harsh realities of city life.
Here's a man who would not take it anymore, a man who stood up against the scum.
The climax of 1968's If, featuring a mass shooting of the school's elite, read in its time as a symbolic expression of youthful revolt, yet it would hardly play that way now, amidst our conversations of toxic masculinity and the all-too-real tragedies of far too many school shootings. In 1988, American History X told a shocking tale of white supremacists and neo-Nazis. But in the context of the time, it was viewed as an investigation into a disturbing but small subculture.
You can see within him the things he could have been, but he's overtaken by rage.
As Heidi Beirich, director of the Intelligence Project at the Southern Poverty Law Center, said, "I don't think anyone watching American History X in the 90s thought its white supremacist characters would ever become mainstream. Today, some of these views are being echoed from the White House."
Our border policy is a joke. Every night, thousands of these parasites stream across the border like some pinata exploded.
So it's easy to imagine that if American History X were released today, our climate would lead to the film being viewed very differently.
It's everywhere I look now. What? This affirmative blaction.
The same can be said of other movies who portrayed anger that felt appealing at the time.
I want you to hit me as hard as you can.
Still, American History X's ultimate message of how easily the anger of lost, misguided youths can be co-opted and exploited by nefarious powers remains as apt as ever today.
This radicalization is a huge public health crisis that we really need to solve.
And the charismatic villain version of the angry young man is so of our times that he's even at the center of our biggest blockbusters.
So, the villagers. Kill them all.
When Star Wars returned with The Force Awakens in 2015, one of the more surprising characters viewers were drawn to was the antagonist, Adam Driver's Kylo Ren.
Show me again the power of the darkness.
Proving that, on some level, many of us continue to relate to this brand of raw, youthful rage and its resentment toward the older generation.
I'm being torn apart. I want to be free of this pain.
Perhaps the most charismatic mainstream villain of our times, though, is a black man with very good reasons to be angry. Black Panther's Eric Killmonger.
These items aren't for sale.
How do you think your ancestors got these? You think they paid a fair price? Or did they take it like they took everything else?
Killmonger's childhood hardship and his philosophy that all Black people around the world must be taken care of make him in many ways more sympathetic even than the film's hero.
Y'all sitting up here comfortable. Must feel good. It's about 2 billion people all over the world that looks like us, but their lives are a lot harder.
Despite the righteousness of his cause and his rage, though, Killmonger's anger still consumes him, eating him from the inside so that he's incapable of being a leader who makes constructive change in the world.
I learned from my enemies. Beat them at their own game.
You have become them.
Billy Joel might have said it best when he sang,
There's a place in the world for the angry young man with his working class ties and his radical plans.
So where is the place for the angry young man and his radical plans in the 21st century? Anger is a response to feeling powerless, an attempt to seize control when you have none. Thus, the anger of the disenfranchised and unheard will always be a crucial political force to be harnessed for change.
That they are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Unless you're loud and black and possess an opinion.
As well as a volatile agent of chaos that's ripe for misuse and misdirection.
Burn it all!
Throughout the decades, the angry young man has remained a constant, but his significance has evolved as his landscape has shifted. What began as the emblem of a working-class hero fighting for space in the mainstream became an intolerant group desperately trying to hold on to its privileged position.
This is the most unethical sham since I've been in politics.
Today, instead, the most politically powerful anger is coming from oppressed minorities who have long been told to suppress their rage.
You call your friend a racist and yet you're surprised when he's upset.
Yeah, we're friends, but suddenly I'm supposed to give you dispensation?
After all, there are plenty of things to still be angry about.
Excuse me if I get a little offended because I didn't see all of this outrage when everything was happening to all of my people since we were stuffed on boats in chains.
The reason the angry young man trope still resonates so widely is because we all know that sometimes it's good to get angry. It's the right thing to do.
A bullet that could puncture my skin, take all my dreams away. A bullet that could silence the words that I speak to my mother just because I'm other.
If you're new here, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified about all of our new videos. This video is brought to you by Mubi, a streaming service we love. Every day, Mubi premieres a new film, whether it's a movie you've been dying to see or one you've never heard of before. There is always something new to discover. So in this world where it's very easy to spend hours debating what you should watch, Mubi is like having a really cool friend with amazing taste in movies, making it so much easier for you. They feature hard-to-come-by masterpieces, indie festival darlings, influential art house and foreign films, lesser-known films by your favorite famous directors, and more. Plus, you can even download the films to watch offline, and there are no ads, ever. This month on Mubi, you can check out Integration Report 1, an indispensable historical record of the civil rights movement by trailblazing filmmaker and artist Madeline Anderson. Anderson is recognized as the first African-American woman to direct a documentary. We can't recommend Mubi highly enough. You can try it out now for free for a whole month. Just click the link in the description below.